I mean, if you go against the Mendez brothers and they put you in De La Riva guard, they're probably going to berimbolo you. You know this. Good luck stopping them, though. Hey there, I'm Stephan Kesting, and this is the Strenuous Life Podcast. Hey guys, Stephan Kesting here, Grapplearts.com, also selfdefensetutorials.com. I have had a good day. There was training in the morning, which was really awesome because I got to get together with my friend and probably one of my primary training partners, Richie Yip, and we got to work on a very specific aspect of omoplata. It's that reciprocal omoplata position. There's a 50-50, which is a leg position, a leg entanglement, a type of guard. Similarly, there's also the 50-50 omoplata, where I've got you in an omoplata and you've got me in an omoplata. And often we roll around. So trying to find ways to switch that more, obviously to my advantage if I'm the person putting the omoplata on. So that's the kind of thing that I was working on this morning. It's funny. This is a problem that has been bugging me for 10 years. You end up in it occasionally, and then you forget, right? So eventually it's like, enough is enough. I've been caught in this enough times. We're going to find a solution. So I think I've got a couple solutions. I still feel like there's some more digging there that can be done. And it gets me to thinking about the beauty of having a home dojo. I mean, the way that I train isn't actually the way that I would recommend to, quote, normal people to train. I think you learn fastest and learn best if you go to class, if you actually have somebody teach you and then get to roll with a wide variety of people. Like do 6 rounds, 10 minutes each, or 6 rounds, 5 minutes each, with a different bunch of people every time. That's how you learn the fastest. Unfortunately, in my life, I'm so busy, I've got so many things going on that it's really hard for me to make that time available. And thus having the home dojo is a lifesaver. Also, I tend to train with a relatively small number of people. There's probably 5 or 6 people that I train with again and again and again. To some extent, this is pure selfishness. This is pure selfishness because I had 35 years of wear and tear on the body doing martial arts. And my goal here is longevity. So I'm pretty careful about who I roll with. 10 years ago, when my chiropractor was telling me, man, you've got the neck of a 60 or 65-year-old, now it's 10 years later, there aren't that many 75-year-old necks out there doing jiu-jitsu. There's a whole bunch of other wear and tear as well. So I'm pretty selective. And I recognize that this isn't how I'm going to make the fastest progress. If I was getting ready for the World Championships, if I was getting ready for Abu Dhabi, I should train with as many different, as tough as possible people as I can. Of course, then you'd be running the risk of injury because the odds of something actually snapping and breaking, the odds of something going catastrophically wrong are pretty high. So the more wear and tear there's been on the body, the more careful I am about who I train with. Also, having the home dojo, just my commute to the dojo being a 30-second walk is amazing. It hasn't always been like this. Years ago, I had 9 puzzle mats, 1 meter by 1 meter square puzzle mats. And I wish I had photos of this. I know there's a photo somewhere of laying this out, living in a shitty basement apartment, and we put the mats down in the kitchen, like some peeling linoleum floor, and we would train there. And I got some good training in there. It was good. It was better than not training, which was the other alternative at the time. So, you don't immediately go from no home dojo to the perfect home dojo. It's taken years and years and years, and I finally built the home dojo of my dreams, 20 by 20. Maybe I'll show it to you sometime on a future video or future bunch of photographs. It's not very complicated. Padded walls, tatami on the mats. It's where I film most of my videos. It's also where I do most of my training. It's just simply amazing. So let's start answering some of the questions that are coming in. Until I get like 1 million followers on Twitter, which you should all follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to figure out if that's still a useful platform. I'm at Stephan Kesting. Until I get 1 million followers on Twitter and 10 million subscribers on YouTube, I don't have anybody to feed me the questions, so I'm doing it all myself. So Abdul asked, what age did I start training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And what age did I get my black belt? So I started grappling in my I started grappling when I was 12 years old. I started grappling when I was doing judo. And that was in an adult class. And judo was the only martial art I was allowed to train by my ever-loving mom. She would not let me, strangely, go train ninjutsu. She wouldn't let me go train karate. She wasn't hot on my career as a ninja assassin. So the only thing I could do was judo. So I would almost consider that the start of my jiu-jitsu career because, of course, Brazilian jiu-jitsu comes directly from judo. Old school judo, but traditional judo. So that was at age 12. Then I got more heavily into grappling in my early 20s. What age did I formally start Brazilian jiu-jitsu? I want to say 26 or 27, 1997. So yeah, I would have been 27, 28 years old. That's when I had my first formal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor, but I'd done years of judo and years of combat submission grappling or combat submission wrestling under Eric Paulson before that. And that obviously played pretty well. My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt took 9 years. So that was a little bit faster. Actually, yes, it took 9 years. A little bit faster than average, but not amazing. It took a long time. A Jiu-Jitsu black belt is one of the most legitimate black belts that you can get in any martial arts system. This idea of, getting Taekwondo black belts at age 12 or age 13 generally doesn't exist. And it's a good thing because it really does mean something. It really does mean that you're beginning to approach your 10,000 hours on the mats. All right. Jiu-Jitsu in the Olympic Games. I'd love to see it. If not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then some form of submission grappling. Actually, I could see submission grappling getting into the Olympics more easily than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I think really this is a very, very political subject. And when you get to the point where the Olympics, we're going to kick out, wrestling out of the Olympics and keep, some stupid equestrian sports. I think more people had medaled in wrestling. More different countries had medaled in wrestling than had ever competed in some of the equestrian sports that they were going to keep. So if they're busy kicking those sports out, then who knows how it's ever going to get into the Olympics. I hope it does. I think some submission grappling or some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or some kind of more ground-oriented thing could be the right thing. I just think that you need to have a big push from some country. Ultimately, I believe that's how it works. Some country has to sponsor it. So, what advice can I give to remote area students who rely on my and other videos to learn and advance? Well, first thing, you've never had a better time in the history of martial arts to get good at something without actually being able to train under a full-time teacher, right? The internet is an amazing thing. People are putting out instructional apps, instructional books, instructional DVDs, instructional online streaming. I've got some of all of those, I think. So there's a ton of information out there. The problem really is context, especially if you go to YouTube, right? If I went to YouTube and I wanted to learn attack from side mount, how many different techniques do you think I could find? I could find 500 easily. Now, does that mean that all 500 are equally valid? Does it mean that all 500 suit my body type? Does it mean that all 500 are equally high percentage? No, of course not. So you need to have a way or you need some guidance there as to what the high percentage techniques are. If you're doing gi from side mount, I would suggest that an arm bar, a spin arm bar, same side arm bar, maybe like a paper cutter choke or popping a knee mount and getting a cross choke. Those would be examples of high percentage techniques. I'm not saying they need to be your technique, but they are high percentage techniques. There's no doubt of it. Lots of people have been tapped out. Whereas if it's some crazy omoplata setup where the guy has to move just in the right way and you can take advantage of it and then do like a jumping, spinning omoplata, that's fantastic. But that shouldn't be the first thing that you learn. So number one problem learning on your own is context. So in terms of tips, well, you need a training partner. You need a couple of training partners. So without training partners, there's no sparring, there's no training. You can't learn this stuff on your own. I'm really sorry. You're better off working on your conditioning. If you have a couple of training partners, then the next piece of advice I would suggest is to follow some kind of curriculum. I've got a very basic curriculum laid out in my book, A Roadmap for BJJ. If you do a search for that online, you can find it completely for free. And the core idea is that there are 6 or 8 positions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You need a couple of escapes from each position, you need a couple of attacks from each position, you need a couple of transitions. So then there's a list of, some standard high percentage techniques that fit into each of those categories that, check off those boxes. So you need some kind of curriculum. And then my final big piece of advice is once in a while, every couple of weeks, every month, do the traveling and go somewhere where you can go and refine your skills against a legitimate school, where you can go and train against a legitimate higher belt. Because in the vacuum, if it's just you and a friend in a garage, who knows what kind of rabbit hole you could go down. Maybe your friend always passes the guard kneeling. Always, 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 always. And so you get half decent at defending a kneeling guard pass. But now when you go to, a bigger school once a month, and you just get smashed because half the people were using standing guard passes and they were just walking around your guard, it exposes the illusion that you've been living, which is that everyone passes the guard on the knees. This applies at a whole lot of levels. Maybe your friend never pushes the pace. So you think it's, I don't need conditioning. Well, you do need conditioning. Maybe your friend only ever falls back for leg locks and you never get good at defending the upper body. Maybe your friend or your training partners never actually put knee on belly on you, right? It's hard to say what the holes in your game are going to be. So if every once in a while you can go and calibrate yourself at a legitimate school with a lot of other people, it'll really take some of the wishful thinking out of the equation. And then, you go away and you're like, oh crap, I don't have any defense against standing guard passes. I don't have any defense against knee on belly. I don't have any defense. I don't have the first clue of how to defend an armbar. Well, then you know what you need to work on. You go off to your little home training situation with your 1, 2, or 3 training partners, and then you come back. Then you can work on that, and then you can go back and get recalibrated. All right, next question. Do I do seminars at other gyms, particularly in the northern suburbs of Chicago? I'm doing a few more seminars at this point. For the longest time, I didn't do any seminars at all. It's not because I didn't like doing it. I had kids. I was homeschooling, part-time homeschooling, single dadding, 2 young kids. So that pretty much destroyed my travel schedule. That's schedule for you Americans. I'm beginning to do a few more seminars, mostly in the Pacific Northwest area, but I'm hoping to spread out and go do some in other parts of the continent and in other countries fairly soon. So this is something that is an area of growth. Next question. Hi, Stephan. Thanks for all the great content. Can you deal some light on adapting submissions to deal with potential concealed weapons, like in your recent traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu armbar video? So, for those of you that don't know, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Stephan Kesting, nice plug there, I did a video with a friend of mine, Alex Kask. And the video was about how traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, one way the traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu would adapt the armbar to make it harder for the other guy to pull out a knife, right? Pulling out a knife and stabbing the guy's leg, or severing the femoral artery, or sinking it into your belly is a pretty good counter to the armbar, pretty good counter to the triangle choke. So how would you deal with sort of a jiu-jitsu training in the context of weapons, in the context of maybe concealed weapons? It's actually not that tough. The hard part is developing the skills on the ground. The hard part is developing the actual skills of armbarring somebody, agnostic of whether they've got a weapon or not. So, focusing 100% on the weapon, I think is a mistake, because it's hard to do the skill development. It's kind of analogous to those guys, I'm sure we've all met them, who, you get them in mount and they immediately start, pretend groin grabbing or pretend biting or pretend eye gouging, and like, all right, they're never going to develop the actual gross motor skills to get out of the position itself, get to a superior position, and then do all their stupid groin grabbing, eye gouging, eye biting, groin biting, all that combative stuff. So if you start with a basic core of skill, how to pass the guard, how to control your opponent, then adapting it for the weapon stuff is sort of the icing on the cake. Now, it's important icing. It certainly is important icing. You do need to know how to do it if you have an interest in self-defense. Easiest way, when you're rolling, once a month, have somebody throw out a plastic tonto or a rubber tonto out onto the mat. Be careful with the eyes. That's the one caveat, the one fear that I have. People to start a roll with either sticks or pretend knives. Pretty easy to get jammed really hard in the eyes. So you need to do this with a sane training partner. But if you're rolling and one guy's got a knife, you will very quickly adapt your game instinctively. If you've got any level of experience in jiu-jitsu or grappling, then it'll happen almost automatically. Now, there's some tips that I can give you. For example, the Kimura grip becomes really important. For example, separating the person's arms from their body becomes really important. And mentally keeping track of where both of their hands are becomes really important. So it's mostly an awareness thing. Yes, there are some technical modifications that you can make or have to make when you're dealing with weapons. Grip fighting, pretty damn important even when you don't have a weapon. Put a weapon in the mix. Basically, 90% of your attention goes to the weapon hand, goes to controlling that and not letting the guy have his way with you with that knife. So if you do some rolling with some weapons, you will very quickly figure out how to adapt. Perhaps we'll do some more videos on, I think, the Self-Defense Tutorials YouTube channel on weapons grappling, and we'll have people losing their minds. But you know what's interesting? I just recently saw a video, I think I posted it on the Grapplearts Facebook page, of old school kendo, pre-World War II kendo, which had sweeps, which had throws, and even had ground grappling. So we would never grapple if we had weapons. Well, actually, you would. You would grapple if you had weapons. Remember Saving Private Ryan? One of the gut-wrenching fights in there was grappling with a knife. Now, I can't refer to a movie to make my point. There was grappling in Saving Private Ryan with weapons. There's grappling in pre-World War II kendo. There's grappling in old medieval texts talking about sword fighting. There's, jiu-jitsu came from a samurai system. It was grappling. They had weapons. So clearly all these cultures are telling us something, that grappling and wrestling was really important in a weapons context. All right, next question. Is a leglock video available now, from Eric? Yes, it is. If you go to grapplearts.com, you go to the video section, either the online video section or the video store. The modern leglock formula is available. I am still working on, I just went through a big review of the alpha or the beta version of the app that's going to be for all the leglock instructionals, and all of the other apps are also going to be merged into one app. I'm tentatively calling the Grapplearts one app to rule them all, or the Grand Unified Grapplearts app. Basically, there's going to be one app, and within there, all the other apps are going to live. You'll have the ability to download or to stream. So depending on whether you're limited by space on your phone, in which case you would stream, or if you're limited by not having availability of data, in which case you're going to download on Wi-Fi and then watch it later. It'll give a lot more flexibility there. Unfortunately, we're still looking at 4 to 6 weeks, so I'm hoping by February. Man, it's been a gigantic project. I can't tell you how much time and effort has gone into that. Alrighty, next question. There was somebody who asked a question a while back about what I thought about the Danaher Death Squad leg position hierarchy. I think just the idea that there's a positional hierarchy and that leg locks are a positional game is a really important contribution to jiu-jitsu, to grappling. That you're not fighting for the leg lock itself, you're fighting for the position. And that maintaining those positions is really what's important. The submission, call it an afterthought is an oversimplification. But against most people, if you can get to the position, you can finish the heel hook most of the time. What it allows you and I to do if we're sparring, as opposed to me going for the heel hook and trying to apply it as fast as I can before you get out, which could lead to injury and really places a high reliance on my sanity and my self-control. if we're fighting for position, like, haha, you got me in standard ashi, but then I managed to reverse it and get you in 411, and my 411 trumps your standard ashi, and now you're totally screwed. That's a much safer game because we're fighting for position. And then applying the heel, like I said, it's an oversimplification to say that finishing it is an afterthought, but against most people who don't know how to hide the heel, who don't know how to mobilize the hip, who don't know how to begin to move to escape these positions, man, finishing it once you've got the position solidified is so easy. It's ridiculous how easy it is. Cauliflower ear. I'm not sure what your question is. I've managed to avoid it. It's got a little bit going on here. I have had to drain it. It's funny, you go to the pharmacy and you ask for hypodermic needles and they look at you like, why do you want hypodermic needles? And they look at you like you are the scum of the earth. Basically, you're like one step away from lying in an alley with a spoon and a lighter and a syringe. You know, all you need is a syringe to inject yourself. You're like, no, cauliflower ear. It's also funny, I've gone to doctors, like, well, the doctor will know what to do with the cauliflower ear. And, the doctor looks at it and goes, oh, I'm going to have to recommend you to a surgeon, which would take days and days and days. And of course, the longer you leave that ear puffy, the greater amount of cartilage gets killed by that buildup of fluid, making the problem worse. So it is a time-sensitive matter. So then I remember going, well, why do I need to go to a specialist about this? All my rugby friends drain it themselves. And he goes, oh, what do they do? I'm like, well, they basically sterilize it and put a hypodermic in there and suck the fluid out. And the guy's like, well, I can do that. So I talked, not a family doctor, I think it was a walk-in clinic doctor, into how to drain my ears. So after that, I figured, okay, I've got the basics here. Really, really, really clean it like crazy. So I would use soap and water, then rubbing alcohol, and then I put a layer of polysporin over it. I take a syringe. The bigger syringes are better. I've just typically used insulin needles. So that's a really fine needle. It hurts a bit less, but it drains a bit slower. And then drain it out. If you're really super squeamish, you might want somebody else to do this for you. And drain it and then put pressure on it. And then most importantly, once you've drained it and you've got some pressure on, don't go and train. Or if you are going to go train, wear ear guards. Wear ear guards. They're all over Amazon. Wear ear guards to protect your ear. And the worse your ear is, the more durable an ear guard you need. I sell a light brand of ear guards on Amazon. They're good if your ears are a bit sore, but if they've completely puffed up and you've just drained them, man, what you need is the heavy duty and not very comfortable to wear wrestling headgear for a while. Basically, if your ears are sore, wear something over your ears or they will get puffed up. The first time I ever had cauliflower ear, my ears had been sore for a little bit. They'd been sore for a few training sessions. Then I went and entered a tournament, and I don't even know what it was. I think it might have been like a cross-face type of thing in a scramble. But anyhow, the thing popped up. It wouldn't have popped up if the ear hadn't previously been sore. And then I had to do the whole draining thing. All right. Do I train at a school now, or do I have a current teacher who I train under? Most of my trainings, I said right in the beginning, I do on my own. I've got my own dojo, and I've got my own bunch of training partners, and that suits my needs pretty well. I'm in a fortunate position where I get to meet up with and learn from quite a number of high-level guys. I think the biggest influence on my game right now is Rob Bernacki from Island Top Team. We did the BJJ formula instructional together, and we did the modern leglock formula together, plus a whole bunch of YouTube videos. And I really like his conceptual approach to jiu-jitsu. Just some of the ideas that I've got from him have been really, really useful. So in terms of formally training at a school, once in a while, but most of the training I do on my own just because of the incredible time constraints that I'm under with 2 jobs and a part-time single dad. Like, that's a lot of work. So there isn't a whole lot of discretionary time. I don't watch TV. I barely ever go to see movies. If I'm not working at one thing, I'm working another or trying to find time to train. So having the home training setup, as I said right at the beginning, has been incredibly useful for me at this stage of my life. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? The weakness of the ankle lock. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. I will say that the ankle lock, the straight ankle lock, is not a very crazy high percentage technique. It can work. It can definitely work. To some extent, it's been a little bit eviscerated by the IBJJF and the rules that they've placed around reaping. It's pretty hard to ankle lock somebody effectively without reaping. Yes, there are exceptions. Yes, there are ways to do it. Yes, there is the stemma lock, which would basically be a heel hook. But on the hierarchy of what the most effective leg lock is, the most effective, most efficient leg lock, if I had a leg lock some 400-pound guy, what would I go to? I'd go to the reverse heel hook, the outside twisting heel hook. That would be my number one choice. It's one of the worst leg locks to be caught in, and it requires the least amount of energy to do the most amount of damage. The next would be the regular heel hook. So not the outside twisting, but the inside twisting heel hook. That's the next most efficient leg lock. After that, it's probably the toe hold. After that, it's probably the knee bar. Now we're talking about, straight ankle lock, the calf cutter, and the various shin locks. They're further down. Not to say they can't ever work. Of course, there are guys who can make them work. Groin stretches, they work great if the guy's super not flexible. They don't work so great if the guy's flexible. So you want something that works against almost everybody. So the hierarchy of leg locks from sort of most effective to less effective are outside twisting or the reverse heel hook, the regular heel hook, the toe hold. Now the knee bar, then I would say the regular ankle lock. And of course, not only are we talking the reverse heel hook, it also, which position are you doing it from? I'll argue that the reverse heel hook from 411 is the most efficient leg lock from the most powerful leg lock position. You could do a reverse heel hook from sort of an cross ashigarami position, still effective, but the guy has more ways to relieve the pressure and more ways to spin out. So it's not only the actual ankle lock or the actual leg lock, it's what position are you applying it from. And that is why there's this leg lock positional hierarchy that you're trying to move up to. So if I had to try to submit some 400-pound guy, I would choose the reverse heel hook from the 411 position. Is there a big man game and a small man game, and can anyone play any kind of jiu-jitsu? There is definitely a big man game and a small man game. Now the catch is that big men can play small man jiu-jitsu. It's hard for a small guy to play big guy jiu-jitsu, so it's not a reciprocal kind of arrangement. I've learned a ton. I've done 3 of the How to Defeat the Bigger, Stronger Opponent series, both Emily Kwok and Brandon Mullins, and I learned a ton while filming this. Because I'm a reasonably big guy, 6'2", 210 pounds for easy math. These are small people. I can use the techniques that they use, most of them, in my own game. And if they have to be that efficient to get their jiu-jitsu to work against bigger people, then if a bigger person is using those small guy techniques, usually it makes him a much more efficient person. It makes his game much more powerful. Sadly, the reciprocal thing is not true. Big guys often have a crushing kind of game, a slow-moving kind of game, where the classic example would be a guard pass where you're just sleeping bagging the guy's legs. Where you grab both legs and sprawl out and slowly inch around. That's not going to work if you're fighting a guy who's 50 pounds, 60 pounds heavier than you. So the options available to a big guy aren't necessarily available to a small guy. But big guys can learn from small guys, and small guys can learn from small guys. That's why some of the best instructors are small guys, because they've really had to make their technique work. And the only attribute that they can bring to the game, the attributes, would be flexibility and speed. But they usually can't bring power, and they can't bring weight to the table. So they've had to find other ways, usually more technical ways, to deal with the big Goliaths among us. Next question. What's your view at training at multiple academies? Is it against the politics of jiu-jitsu? And should I feel bad as a paying customer that I want more than just one school offers? Well, you want my opinion? I think it's fine. Take it, if you're doing like a community college course, you're taking a community college course on medieval history. you've got an itch to scratch and you want to learn more about medieval history, and you go to your local community college down the street to take a course on medieval history. Now, at the same time, you want to go to a vocational school and start your career as a plumber. The vocational school can't get mad at you for going to community college. The community college can't get mad at you for going to the vocational school. If I've got the bandwidth to go to both McGill and Concordia at the same time, or any two universities in the same city, if I can somehow manage that crazy schedule, using, I don't know, methamphetamine and tons and tons and tons of caffeine to do a full course load or a half course load at each, that's my own business. So my opinion has always been it's okay to train at more than one place. I go with what Daniel Santos said, which is, it's okay to train with multiple people. It's okay to teach what they show you. Just give credit. So if you're training at multiple schools and you're teaching, try to, give credit where credit is due. Now, in the real world, a lot of teachers will get really upset if you train at more than one school. A lot of teachers will get upset even if you go into a seminar with somebody else, which is insane. So we all have to live in the real world. And everybody who trains with me, all of my training partners train with other people as well. So this is just how I roll. It's how I think the universe should work. But the universe is a little bit slow on catching up. So you got to work with what you have. My personal opinion should be fine, but there are lots of dissenting opinions on this matter. And the reality is that a lot of people get really pissed off if you train at a school that's not theirs. Do I ever use catch wrestling and jiu-jitsu? I find it better to create pain to get a more dominant position. Yes, I do use a lot of catch wrestling techniques. Most of them have come to me via Eric Paulson, Combat Submission Wrestling. That being said, I'm not actually a huge fan of creating pain during grappling. I think, this whole elbow grinding on the shoulder to free up the joint and then attack the joint, it's one of those things that works better in sparring than it does in competition. Because in competition, people's pain tolerance goes through the roof. It's like tickling. Once in a while, especially when I was younger, I'd try to, somebody would try and tickle me as we're wrestling. Yeah, if you're sparring and you're not all hyped up, yeah, it bothers you. If you're hyped up and amped and focused, what are you doing? And now I'm going to crush you. Now I'm pissed off because you tried something stupid. So similarly, I think a pain-based way to set up your submissions and a pain-based way to set up your techniques, pretty low level. It's analogous to opening the guard by grinding your elbows on the thighs. Something that'll work on white belts. It's something that works on blue belts, and it misfires and backfires hugely as people start getting better. So yes, I use a lot of catch wrestling stuff. You can make an argument that leg locks come from a catch wrestling background / sambo background / shuto background, which of course had a connection to catch wrestling back in the day. So yes, I do use a lot of it, but I don't use the pain-based elbow grinding, chin in the eye socket kind of stuff. Just pisses off your training partners. And it's not that effective when adrenaline is really flowing and people are hyped up. It just makes them angry, and it creates bad blood on the mats. So, next question. Did I have my Picard rash guard made, or did I buy it somewhere? Yeah, I bought it from my friends at Fusion Fight Gear. Or rather, they gave it to me. So Fusion Fight Gear, they make some awesome rash guards. I really like the Picard one. I've been lobbying them for years to do a Picard gi. I would wear that all the time. You would never get me out of it. But, okay, what do I believe creates a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game? This is a tricky one, because you could say well-roundedness. But there are lots of world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys who are not well-rounded. Right? There are lots of people who immediately sit to guard and play one kind of guard, and that's it. Or they're known for one or two moves. So I don't think you can say that well-roundedness is essential for a world-class jiu-jitsu game. I think depth of knowledge in your game. I mean, if you go against the Mendez brothers and they put you in De La Riva guard, they're probably going to barambola you. If you go against the Meows and they get you in their open guard, they're probably going to barambola you. You know this. Good luck stopping them, though. They are going to go do their technique regardless of what you think about it, regardless of how you try and block it. So that speaks to depth of knowledge. They know the attack. You know a counter. Well, they know a counter to that counter. Maybe you know a counter to the counter to the counter, but they know the counter to 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 the counter. It's like when I went and rolled with Marcelo Garcia. I went and rolled with Marcelo Garcia, and I'd been studying his game, and at the time, I had a pretty strong turtle position. I had sweeps and reversals, and I was pretty good at stalling from turtle. And I was like, he was best in the world at attacking the turtle at the time, probably still is. So I knew what he was going to do. So I remember rolling with him, and like, okay, I'm in turtle, I'm waiting for him to get an attack. And he starts the attack. I'm like, haha, I know what's going on. I'm going to counter it because I've thought about this. And immediately just the counter to the counter comes out. So now we go back, and he taps me out, we go back to the turtle, and he does initiates some other move. And I block it, and again, instantly knows the counter to the counter. I think we went counter for counter for counter for counter once. And there was never any danger of me pulling off any of the techniques because his depth of knowledge in that area, and in many, many areas, but his depth of knowledge in that aspect of his game, forcing people to go into turtle, is really deep. So a world-class player can go really, really deep in a couple of areas. He's got a guard pass or a set of guard passes that he can go really deep for. If you go and fight Bernardo Faria and you're a serious challenge and you pull guard on him, I'm pretty confident he's going to try an over-under pass. You could go watch hundreds of hours of footage of him fighting, and there's going to be a lot of over-under passing. Are you going to be able to stop it? Probably not. In part, he's got amazing physical attributes for it, but more importantly, is the depth of knowledge in that one area of that game. And his depth of knowledge in other areas is also really deep. If he ends up on the bottom, he's going to put you in Z guard, or he's going to put you in deep half guard. This is not a big secret. This is not a big revelation. Good luck stopping it, though. I've just given you the key to beating Bernardo Faria. Know how to shut down the over-under pass, and know how to shut down the deep half guard, and know how to shut down the Z guard. All right? There. That's the keys. Oh, and also you should know how to stay out of the omoplata, because he's pretty damn good at the omoplata. So there. Those are the keys to beating Bernardo Faria. Are you going to be able to do it? I would guess not. So the idea of having depth in an area is really, really, really important. Okay, number one tip against a larger opponent who consistently tries to pin you. Well, all opponents are going to pin you. So number one tip against a larger opponent is grip fighting. Grip fight, grip fight, grip fight, grip fight, grip fight. This was made to, I kind of sort of knew this years ago, but then it was working with Emily Kwok in the first How to Defeat the Bigger, Stronger Opponent instructional. They're turned into DVDs. It's going to be online streaming soon, and it is a series of apps. Was the importance of grip fighting. Basically, if he can't put your mitts on you, he's not going to be able to control you that much. And if you can control his arms, if you can control the grips, then it's going to be so much easier for you to do stuff to him and to prevent him from doing stuff to you. So that's the first level of answer. The second level of answer is you need to have a really good guard with good guard retention skills and good pin escapes. And the one key thing here for pin escapes is so many people get into this mode of they fight to stop the guard pass. They fight, they fight, they fight. Oh, damn, it didn't work. The guy got past the guard, and they just lie down there, and then they start thinking about escaping. Now they're into escape mode. No, that's the wrong thing to do. Basically, you want to escape in that transition as they're sinking the side mount. The side mount's never going to be as loose as it is in the first second, right? They're fighting around, they've got past your legs. They still haven't solidified the grip. They haven't got the crossface. They haven't got their grip. They haven't settled their weight yet. That's the time to escape. So keep fighting. Think of it as this whole idea that it takes 3 seconds to score points for a guard pass, to stabilize the position. Well, those 3 seconds you should be going berserk. Those 3 seconds is when you should escape. Don't concede the guard pass and just lie there and try and figure out what to do next. No, keep fighting early. Then, if they manage to shut that down, then go into defensive mode and protect your arms and wait for them to make a move and escape. But don't concede the guard pass too early. All right. I'm going to do 2 or 3 more questions. Best games or strategy for somebody with a bad knee, 2 prior ACL surgeries. You should go study the basic half guard game of Gordo. Gordo was a Gracie Baja black belt who I believe, he did have some really bad knee injuries that prevented him from playing regular closed guard. And so instead he went and developed a half guard game instead. He's the father of the modern offensive half guard game because it didn't put as much stress onto his knees. So in terms of playing from bottom, I would strongly suggest to playing the half guard. Study his videos. There are many kinds of half guards, some of which require a lot of flexibility. So don't do that. Also, if you've had those surgeries, you have to commit to doing the strengthening, to doing the rehab on an ongoing basis for the rest of your life, because those injuries are always going to be there. And so you want everything else around that to be as strong as possible. So hopefully you're doing your leg strengthening, everything from squats to deadlifts to leg extensions to curls and whatever else your physio tells you. But if I was left in a vacuum, you could do your one-legged kettlebell, stiff-legged deadlifts on a Bosu ball. Whatever it is that you do, the stronger you make the legs, the stronger you make the muscles around that joint. In general, that's a good thing. Somebody else asked, how do you strengthen your neck? If you've followed some of the videos that I've done and some of the other tips that I've done, I'm a big fan of doing some neck strengthening work. The worse your neck is, the more having a stronger neck keeps it safe and makes it hurt less. So there's some very simple body weight exercises you can do. I use a neck harness. I actually made one eventually, but there are lots of neck harnesses around where basically they go around your head and they've got weight hanging down in front of you and you're extending your head up and down. So it's like you're making posture against somebody who's pulling your head down. So strengthening those muscles at the back of your neck are really important. There are also ways to strengthen the muscle at the front and side of your neck. Some of those require partners. Some of those require body weight. I'm fortunate enough that the people at Iron Neck gave me a demo unit. It's basically this big giant halo with a bungee cord that attaches to it. So it's hard to explain. Go Google Iron Neck. The only downside is that they're expensive. Those are expensive units. They're a little bit uncomfortable, but they're actually really quite useful, and they hit your neck at angles that you can't hit your neck in other ways. If you want to strengthen the front of your neck, another thing you can do, take a towel, lie down on a bench, put the towel across your forehead, take a big weightlifting plate or a small weightlifting plate, and then take your head forward through a range of motion. You're going to hold the side of the plate, but just don't cheat by lifting with the hands. It's going to be the neck that's pushing against the plate. So that strengthens your neck forwards and backwards. The place to start is with backwards neck extension. Then the next thing to add is forward neck extension. Then you start getting into the sideways and the rotational. And always, this is really important. Hear me now and believe me later. Do not go to failure on neck strengthening. This is not something that you take a conventional weightlifting approach to. You don't want to do 5 reps and then do another couple of forced reps and then do some negatives. No, you're going to really, really hurt your neck. So you want to go just enough to get a burn, and better do that, a light neck workout 3 times a week than go to failure once a week. Because going to failure once a week will inevitably result in you getting injured really quite severely, and that's just not a good thing when it comes to a body part like the neck. Alrighty. My training schedule. Patty Ann wants to know about my schedule. I'd like to know more, especially since especially since I have a packed schedule myself. Basically, you squeeze it in however you can. I'm an expert in having a packed schedule with, like as I said before, 2 kids and 2 jobs and trying to run Grapplearts. It's really tricky. So first question is, what are you going to give up? You can't do everything. So what are you going to give up? Are you going to give up watching House of Cards? Are you going to give up watching Game of Thrones? Are you going to give up rewatching every episode of Orange is the New Black for the second time? You got to give something up. So at some point, you got to make time. And most people waste a lot of time. There are 168 hours in a week. And let's assume 8 hours of sleep, which is more than most people get. So 168 hours. So 7 times 8 is 56. So now we're down to about, we'll allow some extra time for showering and brushing your teeth. So now we're down to 100 hours. Let's say you work 40 hours a week. You got 60 hours a week left. Let's say you got to do basic things like take your car in for oil changes and, eat and things like that. You still got 20 hours a week left probably. What are you doing with those 20 hours? Most people who say, I have no time, are wasting a ton of time if you really audit what it is that they're doing. So trying to find those odd times to squeeze in more training is really important. Now, of course, the problem is many classes, like grown-up jiu-jitsu classes, they happen at noon. If you work a real job and you're a real progressive boss, good luck. I got a friend who works for a big company, works for EA, a big video game company. Turns out the head of the company is a huge fan of jiu-jitsu. So they actually have jiu-jitsu classes in EA where employees can go and train. So either go work for EA, where you can go train at work, or try to find time. It can be tough. Try to find a gym that has morning classes. Try to find, if you can get away for noon classes. Try to find a time for evening classes. Try to have a home dojo. And a home dojo doesn't need to be fancy. It can be 12, it can be 16 1-meter square mats. It could be a tarp on the grass. You got to try squeezing it in. Also know that if you're going through a real busy time, if it's your focus, it will eventually get better, right? You will eventually, if it's a priority for you, you will eventually find time to train again. Nobody trains as much as they want. That's the ironic thing. There are world champions out there who are training for 4 or 6 hours a day, every day, and they're going, man, I'm just not spending enough time. Their limitation is their body starts to break down if they train more. But they want to train more, right? They just can't because their body breaks down. Most normal human beings, they can't train as much as they want because they have this pesky job thing, because they've got to get the kids to school, because they've got to shuttle the kids off to gymnastics or whatever it is, right? But nobody can train as much as they want to. So if you're going through a real busy time in your life, do the best you can. Do the best you can, and the sport will be waiting for you when you finally have more time to devote to it. You just don't want to fall too far behind. And don't worry, if you're older than all your classmates and you've got kids and they don't, and they can train twice a day, 5 days a week, they'll get better faster than you. There's just no way around it. They are going to get better faster than you and kick your ass. I hate to be the bearer of evil tidings, but that's what's going to happen. And you know what? 10 years down the road, if you're still training and they're still training, and then they go and have kids and newborns, you will get your revenge, because they will be sleep deprived. They will be going, oh my God, I can't believe how little time I have. And then you'll be able to kick their ass. So what goes around comes around. All right, guys, take care. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And good luck with your training.
Podcast listeners, if you found this interesting or useful or entertaining, please pass this episode on to somebody else in your social circle or in your training circle. Surely there's somebody else out there who would also find it interesting. This is the way the podcast grows. It's an organic growth by people like you passing it on to their friends and the people that they know. I really, really appreciate this kind of sharing. So thank you so much in advance, and good luck with your training.